We decided to change from tradition a bit.
They are the fast, maneuverable vehicles without any significant armor.
Working on guns was very interesting.
And this is unsurprising because Poland had the second strongest armored forces in Europe after France.
The tank had a specific, purely Polish steering system.
The first tank in the service of the Polish army was the Renault FT. If we were to follow the historical truth, we would have to put this tank at Tier 1. But since there are a lot of such tanks in the game, we decided to change from tradition a bit and make the 4TP tank the Tier 1 vehicle. This is an experimental tank. Its development began in the 1930s after the Polish military realized they had lost time for developing their armored forces. The only 4TP tank was built in 1936. It is a light tank with a 20mm autocannon.
Tier 2 is occupied by probably the most famous and mass-produced Polish tank, the 7TP. It was built on the base of the Vickers Mark E, also known as the Vickers 6-ton. In general, the vehicle was reasonably good and on a par with the T-26, with which they had a common predecessor. The tank had several peculiar features. For example, there was a diesel engine. The vehicle was equipped with a 37mm gun produced under a license from the Swedish Bofors company. It was a good gun. Its armor penetration was at the same level as the T-26's 45mm gun. The 10TP tank is at Tier 3. It's quite a free interpretation of the American Christie tank. More precisely, the tank used the Christie tank suspension. For its armament, this vehicle was equipped with a turret of the 7TB tank, as well as the 37mm Bofors gun and VZ-30 machine gun. The same machine gun was mounted in the hull. The tank had a specific, purely Polish steering system. Just one 10TP tank was assembled, and it rolled out for testing in 1939. When it was already clear that the combined wheeled and track-laying tank formula had become obsolete. That's why the Polish specialists set about developing the 14TP tank that, unlike the 10TP, was a purely tracked vehicle. Unfortunately, all work on this vehicle ended with the beginning of World War II.
In gameplay terms, Tier 1 to 4 tanks of the Polish branch are fast, maneuverable vehicles without any significant armor, with quite a standard set of guns and calibers. The only thing that starts appearing at this tier is slightly increased damage per shot.
The Polish tank building program of the 1930s was quite ambitious. And this is unsurprising because Poland had the second strongest armored forces in Europe after France. In 1937, a competition to design a medium tank was announced. The design drawings of the two vehicles survived, and they were used to create the Tier 5 medium tank, Kasust.
The appearance of the game model is slightly different from the original base schemes. For example, instead of the air-cooled machine guns, which are clearly seen in the drawings, we made them water-cooled machine guns, like the VZ-30 machine guns. The thing is that there wasn't any good air-cooled machine gun in Poland at the time. So we think if this tank had been a mass-produced vehicle, the Polish specialists would have surely equipped it with the VZ-30 machine guns. The drawings aren't clear about what turret this tank should have: welded, riveted, or cast. However, after we had analyzed the fact the Polish cast hoods for the pillboxes before the war, we came to the conclusion that they might as well have made this turret a cast one. So that's why our in-game model has a cast turret with a welded roof.
Starting with Tier 5, the vehicles begin to get the individuality typical of the whole branch. Tanks become a bit heavier, but also keep their mobility, maneuverability, and ability to move around the battlefield fast. The gameplay is similar to the Soviet T-28 tank. The 75mm gun with a damage per shot of 140. In comparison, the damage per shot of other vehicles with the 75mm guns at this tier is about 115.
Further on, there was much more analytical work. Because the tanks we had the drawings for and used for the beginning of the branch ended at Tier 5, and the top vehicles are a reconstruction based on general descriptions and memoirs, backed by the real capabilities of the Polish tank building industry.
There was a famous designer and engineer, Edward Habek, who lived and worked in pre-war Poland. This man took part in the development of such tanks as the TKS, 4TP, and 10TP. Reportedly, he was developing a medium tank right before the start of the war. What exactly that tank looked like, we don't know. However, there were people who stated they had talked to either engineer Habek himself or his relatives, and they emulated the possible look of the vehicle based on those conversations. Using these snippets of information, members of the Polish community created a 3D model. It became very popular among the Polish players, and we knew that we had no right to disappoint people. We had to work on this fan model a bit. We created 2 Habek tanks based upon this model. There's a medium tank at Tier 6 and a heavy tank at Tier 7.
The Tier 6 vehicle is connected in gameplay terms with the Tier 5 tank, but it's heavier. So it's not just a medium tank, it's a heavy medium tank. It's not as maneuverable because it has quite strong armor for its type and tier. Yeah, it's more mobile than the vehicles further along in the branch, but it's definitely a heavy medium tank. The 90mm gun with a damage per shot of 220 to 240 is quite substantial with this tier. Perhaps we'll have to sacrifice the convenience of firing this gun during the test, but it will keep its nice damage. In fact, this tank is a transitional vehicle towards heavier tanks. It's a lightweight version of the Habich tank, a vehicle of a higher tier, classified as a heavy tank. While the Tier 6 vehicle is a well-armored medium tank, the Tier 7 vehicle is a lightly armored heavy tank. Its gameplay will remind you of the KV-13 in the Soviet branch. Although this vehicle doesn't have much armor, everything's fine with this gun. A caliber 105mm and damage per shot of 300 to 320 points will let you know that this is a heavy tank. We plan for the gun's convenience and characteristics to be of a high level.
When we started assembling the top of the Polish branch, we had a question. How do we want them to look? Should they be more historic or be more interesting to play? After the end of World War II, Polish tank building was developed enough. But there were Soviet-produced vehicles rather than Polish-made vehicles. According to the historical logic of branch creation, we should have continued the branch with the T-54 or IS-3. But we chose another way, to create an unusual branch with interesting gameplay. To do so, we needed to dig deeper in the archives and take some historical liberties. Let's start with the Tier 8, the Markovsky Project tank. This tank never existed, so not everyone will be pleased about its inclusion. But since players actively discussed it on the forums and other World of Tanks resources, we decided to add it to the game after all to avoid disappointing you.
We had to improve the source a bit. The vehicle is actually quite strange. It weighs 53 tons and is armed with a 120mm gun. It's the size of the Tiger II. When we create the models of non-existent vehicles, we usually build them from scratch. We have a design engineer in our department who not only recreates the vehicle from the drawings, but also places different components, crew, and armament inside the vehicle. We did the same with the Markowski tank. So, when we arranged all the modules, it became clear that there was a lot of free space inside. That's why we optimized the vehicle a bit. In particular, we reduced its size a little. We think that if this tank had entered production in real life, the designers would have done exactly the same thing.
In gameplay terms, the Markowski tank is the development of the Tier 7 vehicle. It is heavier, better armored, and as a result slower. This is definitely a true heavy tank without any reservations. It prepares players for the higher tier vehicles. We've included a wide variety of guns to choose from for this vehicle. There is a 105mm gun, a 122mm gun, and even a 120mm howitzer. We will test them to see which gun fits this tank better and better prepares players for the other vehicles further in the branch. We'll use the test results to decide. but you can already be sure that the tank will have increased damage regardless of the chosen gun. The concept for the vehicle's armor is almost the same as for the top vehicles. It has a relatively weak hull armor for a heavy tank and a very well-protected turret. We have a vehicle with similar gameplay. It's a T-32 in the American branch. So if you like that one, you'll like this one.
The Tier 9 and Tier 10 tanks were reconstructed on the basis of the diploma works of the Polish engineers Tadeusz Tyszkiewicz and Richard Lewandowski. We should say that we haven't discovered the original drawings. Maybe they will emerge one day. The description of the project is a card where the main characteristics of the tank are specified, a kind of wish list: vehicle armament, weight, and size. Using this information, we created these tanks, Tier 9 and 10 vehicles. First, drafts of both vehicles were prepared and their looks were approved. And then the work on creating full-fledged drawings started.
During the reconstruction, we rested upon the Soviet tank building school. That's why tanks like the Object 777 and the T-54 served as prototypes for the Tyszkiewicz tank.
Working on the guns was very interesting. We took the Czech R-14 anti-aircraft gun as a basis for one gun. Another gun, the VZ-53, is basically a hybrid between the Soviet D-25T tank gun and muzzle brake of the Czechoslovakian D-12 howitzer. This gun was developed by Skoda within the program of unification with the Red Army shells and artillery. Many components that existed in real life were used to reconstruct this tank. For example, the details of the Soviet Object 268 and 272 were used for the roof of the engine compartment. When making the nose and turret of the tank, we used the Soviet projects on creating a tank of extreme parameters. What is a tank of extreme parameters? It's a very heavy assault vehicle with very thick armor and a powerful gun. This led to the enlarged turret ring and appearance of the developed bustle rack, and we also managed to place the engine perpendicular to the hull so we could reduce the tank's size. The running gear was based on the model of the Soviet Object 777 tank. However, we created the tracks from scratch. Even small details like lights, marker lights, and the horn all have their real-life prototypes.
Regarding their gameplay, the Tyszkiewicz and Lewandowski tanks are very much like the premium vehicle we've already talked about. The Tier 9 tank is basically almost the same as the Tier 10 vehicle, but with an allowance for being of the lower tier. It has about 2,000 hit points and a 130mm gun, with an average damage per shot of about 490 to 560. This vehicle is already quite slow, has a well-protected turret, and is the final step that gets players ready for the Tier 10 gameplay. Now let's talk about the top tank of the Polish branch. Its size and look are not unlike some vehicles from the Soviet branch. This is a slow and well-armored heavy tank. Its dynamics are something between the German Super Heavies and Soviet assault vehicles. Its maximum speed is about 35 kilometers per hour. This is a tank for pushing through a flank steadily, using its armor and gun. In the first test iteration, this vehicle is planned to have 2,600 hit points. A 152mm gun with fair damage per shot of 750, unlike the Soviet vehicles that have a lower damage per shot of 650. Its accuracy is 0.38, aiming time is 3 seconds, and armor penetration is about 250mm. Another specific feature of the top Polish vehicles is their very convenient and good gun depression angles. 8 degrees will allow for using the turret armor effectively.
That's how we see the Polish branch at the moment. The next step is all full-fledged test stages, starting from the Super Test, where the vehicles will head in the nearest future and be tested one by one. And of course, there will be a common test stage where you'll be able to try out this branch together with us, evaluate it, and leave your feedback, and then play them after the release. During all this time, you can share your opinion and discuss the Polish branch on the forum and other resources. Thanks for watching, and good luck on the battlefield!